Let us begin with prayer. Lord of creation, we have so much to be thankful for on this day of commencement. We are grateful for family and friends who've supported these students through their years of study and personal growth. We're also grateful for the successes and triumphs that each one here has achieved to make it to this day. We're even thankful for the hardships and challenges that have made these students who they are, perhaps even more so than their successes. We ask that you bless our time together. May it be a joyous, beautiful, and memorable occasion for all. Amen.
Wow, I love this place. Well, first, thank you, Mrs. Seibert, Mrs. Doherty, administrators, members of the Board of Governors, members of the Board of Trustees, faculty, alumni, friends, family, and of course, the class of 2017. I am Daniel Levin, and I am incredibly grateful you all decided to show up today, even after you heard I was speaking. At first, I wasn't quite sure how to approach this speech. I struggled to think of what I wanted to talk about, but I did know I wanted to reflect on my time here at Cranbrook. And then it dawned on me that it was beyond fitting I should approach this speech like I approached the majority of high school. So I procrastinated. A lot. And this was followed by a horrific awakening when I realized there are no spark notes for delivering the most legendary commencement address of all time. 4 years ago, I chose to attend Cranbrook. and thus I made the single most important decision in my life to date. In light of the endless late nights filled with homework and panic attacks, this school has only brought the most amazing people and positive experiences into my life. And I believe going to Cranbrook is one of the greatest things that has ever happened to me. Coming from a small Jewish school, I did not know many people, and I had basically been sheltered in the same environment my entire life. So when I arrived here, this school was nothing short of awe-inspiring. As a freshman, I was eager to branch out and experience new things. And I'm unable to recall every thought I had during my first day here, but I can promise you all, the last thing that sweaty, nervous kid straight out of a Jewish day school thought he would ever do is deliver an important speech, especially in a church. And now I stand in front of you, still sweaty and nervous, but incredibly proud of us and the experiences we have had here. We have formed unbreakable friendships, created lasting memories, and even gained enough knowledge not to flunk out. We are changed people because of this school, and I simply wanted to talk about why. You see, Cranbrook is full of quality people with good intentions. Together, this community stands for certain values that push us to grow into great men, and I'm going to highlight 3 of these values. The first value is a constant pursuit of excellence. As Cranes, attaining excellence in our actions is not a rarity, but rather a habit. I have seen us all strive to be the best because anything less seems pointless. Excellence for the students of this school is simply a way of life. It runs in our blood. The second value is a commitment to discipline. In a demanding environment like our own, discipline is necessary to succeed. During the school day, Cranbrook expects us all to behave like gentlemen, with respect for our peers and teachers. And additionally, Cranbrook in a way forces us to have discipline outside of school. This usually comes in the shape of us prioritizing our studies so that we can go to bed before 3 a.m. on most nights. And I personally believe that discipline is a pivotal attribute to being successful. And without this institution, I would likely not recognize that. And the third value is an appreciation of the efforts of our peers. Now, quite simply, this community nurtures its students to admire each other's incredible abilities. I'm convinced no other school values the works of its students to the extent that we do. And I believe Kingswood constantly being covered with student artwork is the best representation of that. I love that I can name several of my classmates here today who have truly inspired me with their paintings, drawings, photographs, and metalwork. And I'm sure that if Cranbrook did not have such a strong commitment to displaying and validating our work, I would never have grown to appreciate the talents of all my friends. I've witnessed how these 3 values, excellence as a standard, discipline, and an appreciation of my peers, have monumentally influenced our development as young men. And for the rest of my life, I will stay true to the virtues I have come to appreciate at Cranbrook. And as I reflect on my time here and the values I have learned, I can't resist the urge to look forward. See, our years at Cranbrook have been challenging, inspiring, and nothing short of amazing. But I'd like to remind us all, the graduating class of 2017, that life is like one crazy delicious dinner. This Well, this has been merely the appetizer, and the best has yet to come. So always remember to keep feasting, because the world is our buffet. I can't wait to see the amazing things this class will accomplish in the future. From the bottom of my heart, I love you boys, and I will be forever grateful that you are all a part of my life. Stay golden, class of 2017, and always aim high.
We invite the alumni to join the graduates in the singing of the Harrow School Song.
This morning, I have the honor of introducing Bob Bichek, Cranbrook School, class of 1977. Bob grew up in Royal Oak and began his schooling there. However, given his academic ability, his teachers felt that he would benefit from a different learning environment. Bob and his family looked at Cranbrook and at another independent school a few miles down Losser and made the right decision. Bob entered Cranbrook in the fall of 1972 as a member of Form 2, or as we would say today, as an 8th grader. Bob knew none of the other students when he arrived, many of whom were lifers here, but he quickly made friends and learned valuable life lessons along the way. Bob believes that the freedom that he experienced here changed him. He reveled in exploring the campus with his friends, going to the Science Museum and the Greek Theater, and sledding on lunch trays. During his time at Cranbrook, this serious student learned how to balance academics with the joys of life, a balance that he still embraces today. While at Cranbrook, Bob played soccer, participated in track, and was a member of Blue Key, the Cranbrook side of today's Gold Key. He also recalls his senior May, where he interned at the Circuit Court in downtown Detroit. Yet, he identifies his sophomore trip to the Smoky Mountains in January of 1975 as his most formative experience. Yes, I did say January. For a short time, Cranbrook and Kingswood, not yet merged, offered a 2-week interim trip called January Term. I should just say it was called January Term, where any trips, including the wilderness trip, occurred then. Bob recalls his group camping in deep snow on Mount Baldy, or as you may know it, Bob's Bald, losing a sleeping bag, he'll talk about that, wearing borrowed hiking boots and getting blisters, having to split from his group with a few others to retrieve the canoes that couldn't make it to the rendezvous point, and then having to find a way to reunite with his group. One might think that Bob would have vetoed any future outdoor adventures, but it was just the opposite. In fact, Bob is happy to report that he still has his journal and photos from his wilderness trip, a formative experience that ignited his love of the outdoors. So much so that in his senior year, Bob left athletics to join Lodestar, our school's outward bound program, which was under the direction of Frank Norton, who retired just last year. Bob's enjoyment of the outdoors continues today. A teacher who made a positive impact on Bob's life was Director of Schools Arla Seibert, who has fond memories of young Mr. Bichek. She describes Bob as an eager, responsible, high-performing student who thought outside the box. She recalls that he enjoyed math and science, where he demonstrated a strong aptitude for physics. Therefore, it was not surprising that Bob's next stop after Cranbrook was MIT, where he earned a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering and acquired an early interest in robotics. While on his way to Stanford to begin graduate work in robotics, a conversation with a passenger on his flight led to a job offer with a French robotics company. Bob spent his next 2 years in Paris working in the robotics field, returning to the States at the age of 23 to run that company's new U.S. subsidiary. Bob left his work in robotics in 1985 to attend Harvard Business School. He originally intended to return to robotics after earning his MBA, but as he learned more about economics and entrepreneurship, Bob's path changed. When it came time to begin his internship, he chose to work for Bain & Company, a relatively young management consulting firm at that time. Bob found Bain attractive because it focused on client outcomes rather than on reports, and did so in a collaborative and positive working environment. That was 30 years ago, and Bob is still there. Over his tenure at Bain, Bob has served as co-head of the firm's global telecom, media, and technology practice, head of Bain's Boston office overseeing the Northeast region of the United States, and in 2012, he became the company's worldwide managing director. In this role, Bob is responsible for all aspects of the firm's strategy, team, and operations across Bain's global network of 55 offices in 36 countries. Well known for his leadership qualities, client service, and exceptional strategy and operational skills, Bob was recognized by Glassdoor in its most recent poll as the highest-rated chief executive among leaders of large firms. Given his 99% employee approval rating, the Wall Street Journal reported, and I quote, "Congratulations, Bain & Company CEO Bob Bichek. Your employees like you. They really, really like you." That statement was further supported when Bain & Company also earned a #1 ranking in Glassdoor's 2017 Best Places to Work category. About a year ago now, during an interview with Poets and Quants, a news website focused on coverage of business schools, Bob was asked what advice he would give to today's students. He replied, "My advice is don't be afraid necessarily to stay in one place and build something significant." There is no doubt that Bob models that thinking that, perhaps, was influenced by his time at Cranbrook. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Bob Bichek.
Thank you, Claudia, for that very generous introduction. I think I wanted to put my head in my hands during a couple of things you said, but I was afraid that my cap would fall off. It's an honor and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you on this important occasion. Congratulations to the members of the class of 2017. You've completed a formative chapter in your education and in your lives. Certainly it was a formative time for me. Even as we celebrate that very significant milestone, I know that there's also grieving and loss in this tight-knit community today. And so our thoughts, I think I can say my thoughts and speak for all of us when I say our thoughts, are also of that loss and with all of those who are most deeply affected. Mrs. Seibert asked me to speak here today, and when she calls, I do what she says, just as I did 42 years ago when she told me, not hinted, but told me to ask Polly Jo Wheaton to the junior prom. She was my U.S. history teacher. I'm not sure that gave her the authority to, she may have overstepped her bounds then, and also wrote one of my college recommendations. I'm grateful for the care that she and a few other teachers with whom I had a good connection invested in that quiet kid, in me. And I'm thinking of people like Frank Norton and Richard Heavenrich. These names won't mean anything to the students, but they will, I think, to the faculty and some of the parents. Jim Dalton Thompson, Prospero Dagbovi, and others, all now retired, and some passed on. I sought advice from my kids in preparing for this talk. My youngest daughter, now in medical school, said, "Dad, the students expect nothing but platitudes. Don't sweat this." And yet, I can't resist the moment. And so I would like to tell a few stories and to offer 3 pieces of advice about your future, about the choices that you'll make in directing your precious time and energy going forward. My first piece of advice is do what it takes to keep learning and growing no matter what age. Some people have a kind of innate curiosity, develop an openness to new experiences as they grow older, and also have the opportunities to keep on growing, and others don't. For me, a lot of that started here, when I joined Cranbrook in the 8th grade, as Claudia said, because 2 of my Royal Oak teachers cared enough to raise the idea with my parents, and because my parents tightened their belts in order to allow me to attend Cranbrook. Important parts of my own personal journey, if you will, happened here, in the classroom, and on the lower fields, on Outward Bound, as Claudia said, on May Project, at least as we used to call it, and all over this absolutely extraordinary campus. So I'm grateful to those teachers that I had a connection with who pushed or challenged or inspired. As I said earlier, But I'm even more grateful to the students I learned from. Larry Doors had a kind of Marauder's map. You remember that Marauder's map from Harry Potter? He had a kind of Marauder's map of this campus in his head. And when I joined, he not only welcomed me, but he kind of taught me how to use our freedom. I skipped a lot of classes in my first years here, like maybe half of them, because there was so much to do and so much that was new. We'd borrow lunch trays from the cafeteria and sled down Woodchip Hill, or depending on the weather, we'd play bumper pool in Marcus, or we'd play basketball in the gym. We went again and again to the interactive exhibits at the Science Institute or through the galleries at the Art Museum. We spent hours trying to get into the tunnels when they would be unlocked, or if we could somehow get a key. And mostly, I just explored the grounds, trying to learn when the Crying Zeus plumbing would be turned on, or when the sun just hits the right angle through the arch over the ramp of the Chinese dog. Trying to figure out when Jonah would be good for swimming, which I realized is now not allowed. I learned how to handle the freedom that we had here at Cranbrook, actually becoming pretty disciplined by the 10th grade. But I thrived because I learned to follow my own curiosity, in part through the example of Larry Doors, and in particular, not to do what I was told. And I'm grateful for that. Ty Hare also taught me a lot here, including how to win or lose with a kind of grace. I was used to being the fastest kid, but as I went through puberty, I just wasn't that fast anymore. One day on the old cinder track, I went for a run this morning on the new, it's a beautiful track now, but in those days it was a cinder track, and when we ran hurdles, if you caught a foot, caught a toe, and tripped, you'd have cinders buried in your skin under your knee. One day on that old track, our coach, Mr. Manhart, who taught geometry, had the two of us race, except that he removed all the hurdles from my lane. Uh-oh, this had the potential to be embarrassing. And sure enough, Ty still beat me, smoothly taking the hurdles in his lane without breaking stride. His grace in victory or in defeat, whatever sort of activity we were up to in that particular area, was a beautiful and a gentlemanly thing, without knowing it in ways that are both profound and relatively superficial. Ty taught me manners of all sorts, from opening doors for others to hanging up my trousers at night. That had important lessons for just how to behave and how to treat other people. And a third would be Gordy Van Dusen, who I think would be astonished to hear me mentioning him in a graduation speech. Gordy taught me kindness of a sort when my sleeping bag went down the river in Tennessee. Actually, Jim Gell fished it out of the river downstream, but it was unusable for a few days, and Gordy shared his own sleeping bag. It's not easy for two teenage boys to share a sleeping bag for multiple reasons. That was a kind of kindness that he showed me. And I could go on and on, but I won't, with stories like these about learning from my peers while at Cranbrook. The point is that I bet so could each of you, even though you almost certainly don't realize it quite yet. I recall being asked in middle school science project to dig up and identify everything in a square meter of dirt next to the Kingswood parking lot. It was eye-opening, all kinds of life in that dirt. But that dig was meant to be a kind of microcosm, and it was. The lesson came through, a microcosm of the world, and a lesson for noticing and experiencing the richness of the world around us. Find your own way of coming to know that richness, of continuing to learn and to grow beyond your formal education, beyond college and even grad school, and never stop. My second piece of advice is to plant trees, or plant more than you harvest of something. What do I mean by plant trees? Well, be a part of something larger than yourselves. build or nurture or grow something, a book, a painting, an idea. Maybe it's to invent a product or an algorithm, raise a family, perhaps above all. If you have that opportunity, be a part of building a company or maybe an NGO, or be a part of building an institution such as Cranbrook. Chances are you'll leave behind something that is both meaningful and good. Do you know the beautiful tree, I'm not sure if it's a purple beech, but in the Cranbrook Diag, planted in memory of Sally Heavenrich? I checked this morning and I was able to push away the mulch, and that plaque dedicating it to Sally is still there. Richard Heavenrich was my calculus teacher, a man viewed by at least some as maybe a bit of a curmudgeon to be avoided. About a year after Sally died, Mr. Heavenrich invited me and another student, Bilbo Brems, to his home for dinner. We were terrified, but could think of no way to get out of it. I still remember the pearled onions. He stewed pearled onions, among other things, for the dinner that night. I'd never had pearled onions before. But more than that, I remember the warmth, the humility, and the kindness that he showed us that evening. We were embarrassed, I was embarrassed, at our immaturity and misunderstanding of our teacher and of what he'd been through in the years since Sally had passed away. When Richard passed, Dick Heavenrich passed, I wrote a note to his two sons, actually, about the kindness that I remembered of their dad. That man planted trees in the generations of students that he taught, including me. After college in 1981, I backed out of a PhD fellowship at Stanford in a little bit of an odd way, and instead moved to Paris to join a small robotics startup. Taking that somewhat unconventional path less traveled, if you will, led to learning and opportunities that I never expected, including the opportunity to start the U.S. subsidiary of that company in Livonia, not far from here, when I was only 23 years old. Eventually, I went to business school and then joined a young consulting firm called Bain & Company, as you heard. It's unusual nowadays to spend very long with one company. But I had dinner day before yesterday, this week, with a friend and a close friend and colleague, celebrating the ups and downs we enjoyed together, starting the same day, this coming Sunday, 30 years ago, at what was then a small firm. So in deciding where you'll plant trees, where to give your energy in the years ahead, don't be overly influenced by others. Do what's right for you, and then give it all you've got. If you do, you will naturally build meaning into your life through the investments of time and attention that you give to that. To quote John Gardner, who I think said this well, meaning isn't something that you stumble across like the answer to a riddle or the prize in a treasure hunt. Meaning is something that you build into your life. You're the only one who can put together that unique pattern that will be your life. Let it be a life that has dignity and meaning for you. And if it does, then the particular balance of success and failure is of much less account. Finally, we are getting to the end. My third and final piece of counsel to you. I hope you will cultivate a zest for living. The teacher that I liked least at Cranbrook, and I think it was entirely mutual, taught me that phrase, to cultivate a zest for living, which sticks with me even after all these years. How much we each make of the opportunities that we have right in front of us varies a lot, in part based on this quality of temperament. My classmate Jeff Sobel, a friend from Cranbrook with whom I remain close, he had it, and he still does today. Here's a story to illustrate. One time senior year, on a day after school, a few of us, led by Jeff, drove to upstate New York. We then hiked through the night until we arrived, as the sun was coming up, at the base of 1,000-foot face at Wall Face, New York, exhausted, but with our adrenaline pumping as the sun came up. And then 3 of us began to rock climb on that face. Once on top, a sudden thunderstorm came up, and wary of the lightning risk, we had to rappel down in a hurry, but without time to set up belay. Yikes, rappelling down without the safety ropes. That kind of intensity, or zest for living, normally mellows as we get older. But Jeff, the student I was talking about, now runs the cardiac cath lab at Rush Medical Center in Chicago. And in his spare time, he is the founder and CEO of a very successful cardiology software company. My point is to encourage you to live and work as though it matters, with passion and with caring. The vitality will in turn be inspiring and energizing to others. Because life can easily take one down, loss and pain are also part of life for all of us. To paraphrase Rocky Balboa, life will test how much you can take, no matter who you are, and still get up and keep moving forward. So keep learning and growing, no matter what age. Plant trees, lots of trees. Also true literally that we need lots of trees for other reasons. And cultivate a zest for living. In closing, that song we just sang a few minutes ago, the Harrow School song, didn't mean all that much to me when I sat where you are now 40 years ago. Now, I wonder if many of the parents here might agree with me when I say that 40 years on, I have many memories and much upon which to reflect. But mainly, I just want 40 more. And while I acknowledge the greed, I suppose, contained in that wish, I hope that you all will return here decades from now, worn but not tired of life, rather with a zest for decades more, and that you'll be able to bring that energy to inspire others and to contribute something back. Congratulations again on graduating from this wonderful place. I wish you all rich adventures filled most of the time with love and with peace of mind. It's been my honor to be invited here to say a few words on this occasion now, 40 years on. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. It's at this point in our program that we welcome back our alumni. As I call your name, will you please stand and remain standing until all names are read. First, our distinguished alumnus, Bob Bichek, class of 1977. CEC trustees, Jameson Williams Feliski, 1986. Robert Wilson, 1976. William Goldsmith, 1971. School governors and governors emeritus. Eugene Budmore, 1953. Don Slotkin, 1954. Wade Measy, 1976. Charlene Royce Grandilius, 1978. Philip Hall, 1984. Matthew Trunsky, 1984. Class of 1957, for their 50th reunion, Jim Akers. Class of 1977, Paul Machuro. From other reunion classes, Sonia Geluni Pastori, 1981. Alex Hyman, class of 2004. Alumni parents of graduating seniors, Les Grossinger, 1977. C.J. Gesquire, 1980. Helen Billig-Riesner, 1982. Nancy Wolpen Rector, 1983. Roger Edluni, 1985. Andrea Denew Gatilia, 1985. Scott Leslie, 1987. Sean O'Leary, 1987. Stephanie Sims, 1987. Matthew Erickson, 1990. May I ask at this time, alumni siblings. There are many alumni who are brothers and sisters of graduates here today, so may I ask all of those alumni siblings to please stand. Our alumni faculty and staff, Dr. Darrell Taylor, 1970, Susan Akins Post, 1978, Audrey Armulian, 1986, David Cohen, 1990, Jacob Hazard, 1992, Susan Strickland Muskovitz, 1997, Carolyn Moss, 2003, Hannah Robinson, 2005, Griffin Howell, 2007, our honorary alumni, Deborah Rutson, Charles Shaw, John Winter, Arla Seibert. At this time, I would like to ask all our alumni whose names I did not have in advance to please stand and be recognized. Will the audience please join me in welcoming back our alumni? Finally, I would like to make one more recognition, and that is Rich Lamb. Will you please stand and be recognized for your 40 years of service at Cranbrook Schools?
The faculty has discharged its duties to the Director of Schools. We have determined that all of those members of the class of 2017 have met the requirements for graduation. On behalf of the faculty, I recommend to you the class of 2017 for the awarding of diplomas.
Nikhil Raja Reddy Abler. Jonathan Patrick Agnew. Theodore Roger Agiloni, cum laude. Yagiz Akiska. Yoaschan Akiska. Jalen Keith Allen. Jacob Coleman Apsey. Nikhil Badam, cum laude. Jacob Alexander Barber. Michael Bean, cum laude. Ryan Joseph Bradley. Z. Ki Kai. Miles Isaac Kaminer. Brent Noah Carlson. Ocean Jonathan Chiang. Hoi Man Chu. Colin Michael Clark. John Andrew Cunningham. Samuel Morris Curran, cum laude. Ethan Ross Davis, cum laude. Nick Davis. Alphonse Joseph Debe IV. Devin Coldip Diogan, in absentia. Joseph Allen Devroy. Joshua B. Diamond. Cheng Shu Dong. Dustin Otto Duclos. Wyatt Andrew Dudgeon. Joseph Robert Dumas. Alec Noah Eisenstadt. William Henry Erickson, in absentia. Garrett MacArthur Faulkner. Blake Alexander Fisher. Patrick Ryan Foley. Alessandro Joseph Ford Ripalone. Wyatt Aboud Frickman, cum laude, in absentia. Kyle Thomas Gesquire. Kyle Thomas Gierman. Arlo Jacob Goldman. Jalil Tavon Gooden. Daniel Alexander Grossinger. Giorgio Michael Gutilla. Rashid Haymore. Jacob Handman. Tail Young Aaron Hahn, cum laude. Joshua G. Hartman, cum laude. Thomas Leonard Hines. Jack Lipton Hollander. Jason Jia Hu. Jae Wan Her. Suwat Antaracha. Benjamin Raphael Iorio. Cullen Thomas Irvine. Blake Alexander Johnson. Sung Won Chun. Avin Kachal. Sebastian William Knapp. Skylar Lyndon Knapp. Tristan Amos Noor. Ian Joseph Kovach. Daniel Mi-young Chol Lee. Samuel Scott Leslie. Daniel Stephen Levin. Shiqing Li. Enyang Lu. Max Patrick Livingston. Joseph Henning Luciani. Alexander James Lysette. Yingshen Ma. John Marinescu. Michael Terrence McLaughlin. Ian Joshua McManus. Jack Strother Murphy. Rodman John Myers, in absentia. Colin Edward Neal. Ryan Andrew Neff, cum laude. Maxwell Jacob Norris. Wilder Thomas North. Jungsoon James O. Avanish Sean Oja. Charles Michael O'Leary. Young Sung Park. Mark David Patrick. Theodore Roberson Pisner. Garrett John Powell. David Christopher Rates, cum laude. William Paul Reesner. Kyle Stephen Rector. Karsten Thomas Ritter. A.J. Rodriguez. Nicholas Scott Rokas. Daniel Bruce Russell, Jr. Michael Saloom. Tyler Michael Santangelo. Joseph Yale Sasson. Hunter Matthew Schubert. Nicholas Patrick Sims. Samuel Gregson Slocum. Cole Thyssen Smolinski. Anthony Joseph Suriano. L.J. Warren Tellis. Cole Tyler Thompson. Y. Chung Se, cum laude. Michael Donald Warman, cum laude. Chin Yi Wang, cum laude. Mario Rashid Watson, in absentia. Conrad Helm Wegge. McLean Adams Woodbury. Jason Q. Wu. Chao Su. Matthew P. Yang, cum laude. Jen Hao Young, cum laude. Eric William Yusha, cum laude. Yi Young Jen. Alexander Evan Zurich. Gentlemen, congratulations to the class of 2017.
We invite the alumni to join the graduates in the singing of the school hymn.
Amen.
Let us pause to pray. Eternal God, we thank you once again for this moment. So many have contributed time, resources, sweat, and tears to help these young men reach this milestone. As many of us are rightly filled with pride about these students' accomplishments, help us not to take this moment for granted. We pray that the students themselves would appreciate Cranbrook and the education they received here, an education that goes beyond the mind and encompasses the whole person. May they look back on these years with profound joy and gratitude. Help us all never to forget what a unique and special place this is, and that we're already blessed to be associated with such a wonderful school and community. Amen.
We invite all in attendance to rise and join in the singing of America.
God of heaven and earth, we're all joyful about these young men and their accomplishments. Yet many of us are also experiencing a loss and sadness. Bring our community closer together. Help us to be joyful with those who are joyful and to mourn with those who are mourning. May we always comfort, encourage, and celebrate one another. Lord, we send these young people out from our community of Cranbrook Kingswood, and we ask for your blessing. As they aim high and go forth to serve, help them not to neglect those who are often named as lowly, the poor, the marginalized, and those who are suffering. Give us all discerning eyes and ears to help others, especially those we might normally neglect or fail to notice. Give each student safety, direction, and courage. Help them to use everything they've learned and become over their years here to the very best of their abilities. Bless parents and families as well. Give them peace in this time of transition, and graciously provide students and parents with divine wisdom to navigate the future that awaits. Finally, we also ask for a restful and rejuvenating summer for all students, parents, staff, and faculty. Empower us all to be a blessing to others in everything we say and do. Amen.